Chapter 18 of Galactic Patrol by E. Smith. Chapter 18. Kinnison was dragged out of unconsciousness by the knowledge that he had landed his speedster inertialess. He came to, or rather to say that he came half to would be a more accurate statement, with a yell directed at the blurrily seen figure in white, which he knew must be a nurse. Nurse! Then, as a searing stab of pain shot through him at the effort, he went on, thinking at the figure in white through his lens. My speedster! I landed her free! Get the spaceport! There, Lensmen, a low, rich voice crooned, and a red head bent over him. The speedster has been taken care of. Everything is on the needles. Go to sleep and rest. But my ship! Never mind your ship, the unctuous voice went on. It was landed and put away. Listen, dumbbell, snapped the patient, speaking aloud now in spite of the pain, the better to drive home his meaning. Don't try to soothe me. What do you think I am, delirious? Get this and get it straight. I said that I landed the speedster free. If you don't know what that means, tell somebody that does. Get the spaceport. Get Haynes. We got them, Lensmen, long ago. Although her voice was still creamily, sweetly soft, an angry color burned into the nurse's face. I said everything is on zero. Your speedster was inerted. How else could you be here inert? I helped do it myself, so I know that she's inert. QX. The patient relapsed instantly into unconsciousness, and the nurse turned to an intern standing by. Wherever that nurse was, at least one doctor could almost always be found. Dumbbell, she flared. What a sweet mess he's going to be to take care of. He's not even conscious yet, and he's calling names and picking fights already. In a few days, Kinnison was fully and alertly conscious. In a week, most of the pain had left him, and he was beginning to chafe under restraint. In 10 days, he was fit to be tied, and his acquaintance with his head nurse, so inauspiciously begun, developed even more inauspiciously as time went on. For as Haynes and Lacey had each more than anticipated, the Lensman was by no means an ideal patient. In fact, he was most decidedly the opposite. Nothing that could be done would satisfy him. All doctors were fatheads. Even Lacey, the man who had put him together. All nurses were dumbbells, even or especially Mac, who with almost superhuman skill, tact, and patience had been holding him together. Why, even fatheads and dumbbells, even high-grade morons, ought to know that a man needed food. Accustomed to eating everything that he could reach, 3 or 4 or 5 times a day, he did not realize, nor did his stomach, that his now quiescent body could no longer use the 5,000 or more calories that it had been wont to burn up each 24 hours in intense effort. He was always hungry, and he was forever demanding food. And food, to him, did not mean orange juice or grape juice or tomato juice or milk, nor did it mean weak tea and hard dry toast and an occasional soft-boiled egg. If he ate eggs at all, he wanted them fried, 3 or 4 of them, accompanied by 2 or 3 thick slices of ham. He wanted and demanded in no uncertain terms, argumentatively and persistently, a big, thick, rare beefsteak. He wanted baked beans, with plenty of fat pork. He wanted bread in thick slices, piled high with butter, and not this quadruply and unmentionably qualified toast. He wanted roast beef, rare and great chunks. He wanted potatoes and thick brown gravy. He wanted corned beef and cabbage. He wanted pie, any kind of pie, in large, thick quarters. He wanted peas and corn and asparagus and cucumbers, and also various other worldly staples of diet, which he often and insistently mentioned by name. But above all, he wanted beefsteak. He thought about it days and dreamed about it nights. One night in particular he dreamed about it, an especially luscious porterhouse, fried in butter and smothered in mushrooms, only to wake up, mouth-watering, literally starved, to face again the weak tea, dry toast, and horror of horrors, this time a flabby, pallid, flaccid, poached egg! It was the last straw. "Take it away," he said weakly. Then, when the nurse did not obey, he reached out and pushed the breakfast, tray and all, off the table. As it crashed to the floor, he turned away, and in spite of all his efforts, 2 hot tears forced themselves between his eyelids. It was a particularly trying ordeal, and one requiring all of even Mac's skill, diplomacy, and forbearance, to make the recalcitrant patient eat the breakfast prescribed for him. She was finally successful, however, and as she stepped out into the corridor, she met the ubiquitous intern. "How's your Lensman?" he asked in the privacy of the diet kitchen. "Don't call him my Lensman," she stormed. She was about to explode with the pent-up feelings, which she, of course, could not vent upon such a pitiful, helpless thing as her star patient. "Beefsteak! I almost wish they would give him a beefsteak, and that he'd choke on it, which of course he would. He's worse than a baby. I never saw such a brat in my life. I'd like to spank him. He needs it. I'd like to know how he ever got to be a Lensman, the big cantankerous clunker. I'm going to spank him too one of these days. See if I don't." "Don't take it so hard, Mac," the intern urged. He was, however, very much relieved that relations between the handsome young Lensman and the gorgeous redhead were not upon a more cordial basis. "He won't be here very long, but I never saw a patient clog your jets before." "You probably never saw a patient like him before either. I certainly hope he never gets cracked up again." "Huh? Do I have to draw you a chart?" she asked sweetly. "Or if he does get cracked up again, I hope they send him to some other hospital." And she flounced out. Nurse McDougal thought that when the Lensman could eat the meat he craved, her troubles would be over. But she was mistaken. Kinnison was nervous, moody, brooding, by turns irritable, sullen, and pugnacious. Nor is it to be wondered at. He was chained to that bed, and in his mind was the gnawing consciousness that he had failed. And not only failed, he had made a complete fool of himself. He had underestimated an enemy, and as a result of his own stupidity, the whole patrol had taken a setback. He was anguished and tormented. Therefore, "Listen, Mac," he pleaded one day, "bring me some clothes and let me take a walk. I need the exercise." "Not yet, Kim," she denied him gently, but with her entrancing smile in full evidence. "But pretty quick. When that leg looks a little less like a Chinese puzzle, you and Nursey go bye-bye." "Beautiful, but dumb," the Lensman growled. "Can't you and those cockeyed croakers realize that I'll never get any strength back if you keep me in bed all the rest of my life? And don't talk baby talk at me either. I'm well enough at least, so that you can wipe that professional smile off your pan and cut that soothing bedside manner of yours." "Very well. I think so too," she snapped, patient at long last gone. "Somebody should tell you the truth. I always supposed that Lensmen had to have brains. But you've acted like a spoiled brat ever since you've been here. First you wanted to eat yourself sick, and now you want to get up, with bones half knit, and burns half healed, and undo everything that has been done for you. Why don't you snap out of it and act your age for a change?" "I never did think nurses had much sense, and now I know they haven't." Kinnison eyed her with intense disfavor, not at all convinced. "I'm not talking about going back to work. I mean a little gentle exercise, and I know what I need." "You'd be surprised at what you don't know." And the nurse walked out, chin in air. In 5 minutes, however, she was back, her radiant smile again flashing. "Sorry, Kim. I shouldn't have blasted off that way. I know that you're bound to backfire and to have brainstorms. I would too if I were—" "Cancel it, Mac," he began awkwardly. "I don't know why I have to be such a mutt as to be crabbing at you all the time." "QX, Lensman," she replied, entirely serene now. "I do. You are not the type to stay in bed without it griping you. But when a man has been ground up into such hamburger as you are, he has to stay in bed whether he likes it or not, and no matter how much he pops off about it. Roll over now and I'll give you an alcohol rub. But it won't be long now, really. Pretty soon we'll have you out in a wheelchair." Thus it went for weeks. Kinnison knew his behavior was atrocious, abominable, but he simply could not help it. Every so often the accumulated pressure of his bitterness and anxiety would blow off, and like the jungle tiger with a toothache, he would bite and claw anything or anybody within reach. Finally, however, the last picture was studied, the last bandage was removed, and he was discharged as fit. And he was not discharged, bitterly although he resented his captivity, as he called it, until he really was fit. Haines saw to that. And Haines had allowed only the most sketchy interviews during that long convalescence. Discharged, however, Kinnison sought him out. "Let me talk first," Haines instructed him at sight. "No self-reproaches, no destructive criticism, everything constructive. Now, Kimball, I'm mighty glad to hear that you made a perfect recovery. You were in bad shape. Go ahead." "You've just about shut my mouth by your first order." Kinnison smiled sourly as he spoke. 2 words. Flat failure. No, let me add 2 more. As yet. "That's the spirit," Haines exclaimed. "Nor do we agree with you that it was a failure. It was merely not a success, so far, which is an altogether different thing. Also, I may add, that we had very fine reports indeed on you from the hospital." "Huh?" Kinnison was amazed to the point of being inarticulate. "You just about tore it down, of course, but that was only to be expected." "But, sir, I made such a—" "Exactly. As Lacey tells me quite frequently, he likes to have patients over there that they don't like. Mull that one over for a bit. You may understand it better as you get older. The thought, however, may take some of the load off your mind." "Well, sir, I'm feeling a trifle low, but if you and the rest of them still think—" "We do so think. Cheer up and get on with the story." "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and before I go around sticking out my neck again, I'm going to— You don't need to tell me, you know." "No, sir, but I think I'd better. I'm going to Regia, to see if I can get me a few treatments for swelled head and lame brain. I still think that I know how to use the lens to good advantage, but I simply haven't got enough jets to do it. You see, He stopped. He would not offer anything that might sound like an alibi, but his thoughts were plain as print to the old Lensman. "Go ahead, son. We know you wouldn't." "If I thought at all, I assumed that I was tackling men, since those on the ship were men, and men were the only known inhabitants of the Aldebaran system. But when those wheelmen took me so easily and so completely, it became very evident that I didn't have enough stuff. I ran like a scared pup, and I was lucky to get home at all. It wouldn't have happened if—" He paused. "If what? Reason it out, son," Haines advised pointedly. "You were wrong, dead wrong. You made no mistake, either in judgment or in execution. You've been blaming yourself for assuming that they were men. Let us suppose that you had assumed that they were the Aresians themselves. Then what? After close scrutiny, even in the light of after-knowledge, we do not see how you could have changed the outcome." It did not occur even to the sagacious old admiral that Kinnison need not have gone in. Lensmen always went in. "Well, anyway, they licked me, and that hurts," Kinnison admitted frankly. "So I'm going back to Regia for more training, if they'll give it to me. I may be gone quite a while, as it may take even them a long time to increase the permeability of my skull, enough so that an idea can filter through it in something under a century." Haines pondered. "It has never been done. They are a peculiar race, incomprehensible, but not vindictive. They may refuse you, but nothing worse. That is, if you do not cross the barrier without invitation. It's a splendid idea, I think, but be very careful to strike that barrier free and at almost no power, or else don't strike it at all." They shook hands, and in a space of minutes the speedster was again tearing through space. Kinnison now knew exactly what he wanted to get, and he utilized every waking hour of that long trip in physical and mental exercise to prepare himself to take it. Thus the time did not seem long. He crept up to the barrier at a snail's pace, stopping instantly as he touched it, and through that barrier he sent a thought. "Is it permitted that I approach your planet?" he asked, neither brazenly nor obsequiously. He was matter-of-factly asking a simple question, and expecting a simple reply. He knew that to these beings, whatever they really were, salutations and identifications were alike superfluous. Nor was he met as Helmuth had been met. "Ah, 'tis Kimball Kinnison, of Earth. A slow, deep, measured voice resounded in his brain. "Neutralize your controls. You will be landed." He did so, and the inert speedster shot forward, to come to ground in a perfect landing at a regulation spaceport. He strode into the office to confront the same grotesque, dragon-like entity who had measured him for his lens not so long ago. Now, however, he stared straight into that entity's unblinking eyes in silence. "Ah, you have progressed. You realize now that vision is not always reliable. At our previous interview, you took it for granted that what you saw must really exist, and did not wonder as to what our true shapes might be." "I am wondering now, seriously," Kinnison replied. "And if it is permitted, I intend to stay here until I can see your true shapes." "This?" And the figure changed instantly into that of an old, white-bearded, scholarly gentleman. "No. There is a vast difference between seeing something myself and having you show it to me. I realize only too well that you can make me see you as anything you choose. You could appear to me as a perfect copy of myself, or as any other thing, person or object, conceivable to my mind." "Ah, you have indeed progressed. While you were expected to return, you were ahead of time by several of your years. When you approached the barrier, it was supposed that you came to ask for some particular information. But now that I search your mind, I perceive that what you seek is not mere information, but is indeed knowledge." "You say that you expected me. How could you know that I was coming? I didn't decide definitely myself until only a couple of weeks ago." "It was inevitable. When we fitted your lens, we knew that you would return if you lived. As we recently informed that one known as Helmuth." "Helmuth? You know then where?" Kinnison choked himself off. He would not ask for help in that. He would fight his own battles and bury his own dead. If they volunteered the information, well and good, but he would not ask for it. Nor did the Arisian furnish it. "You are right," the sage remarked imperturbably. "For strong development it is essential that you secure that information for yourself." Then he continued his previous thought. "As we told Helmuth recently, we have given your civilization an instrumentality, the lens, by virtue of which it should be able to make itself secure throughout the galaxy. Having given it, we could do nothing more of real or permanent benefit until you Lensmen yourselves began to realize what it was that we had given you. That realization has been inevitable. From the first it has been certain that in time your minds would become strong enough to discover the theretofore unknown depths of power of your lenses. As soon as any mind made that discovery, it would, of course, return to Arisia, the source of the lens, for additional instruction, which equally, of course, that mind could not have borne previously. Decade by decade your minds have become stronger. Finally you came to be fitted with the lens. Your mind, while pitifully underdeveloped, had a latent capacity and a power that made your return here certain. Since your enlensment there has been one other who will return. Indeed, it has become a topic of discussion among us, as to whether you or that other would be the first advanced student." "Who is that other, if I may ask?" "Your friend, Warsaw, the Valancian." "He's got a real mind, way ahead of mine," the lensman stated, as a matter of self-evident fact. "In some ways, yes. In other and highly important characteristics, no." "Huh?" Kinnison exclaimed. "In what possible way have I got it over him?" "I'm not certain that I can explain it exactly in thoughts which you can understand. Broadly speaking, his mind is the better trained, the more fully developed. It is of more grasp and reach, and of vastly greater present power. It is more controllable, more responsive, more adaptable than is yours, now. But your mind, while underdeveloped, is of considerably greater capacity than his, and of greater and more varied latent capabilities. Above all, you have a driving force, a will to do, an undefeatable mental urge that no one of his race will be able to develop for many cycles of time to come. Since I selected you as the first to return, I am naturally gratified that you have developed so rapidly." "Well, I've been more or less under pressure, and I got quite a few lucky breaks. But at that, it seemed to me that I was progressing backward instead of forward." "It is ever thus with the really competent. Prepare yourself. He launched a mental bolt, at the impact of which Kinnison's mind literally turned inside out, in a wild, gyrating spiral vortex of dizzyingly confused images. "Resist!" came the harsh command. "Resist? How?" demanded the writhing, sweating Lensman. "You might as well tell a fly to resist an inert spaceship." "Use your will, your force, your adaptability. Shift your mind to meet mine at every point. Apart from these fundamentals, neither I nor anyone else can tell you how. Each mind must find its own medium and develop its own technique. But this is a very mild treatment indeed. One condition to your present strength. I will increase it gradually in severity, but rest assured that I will at no time raise it to the point of permanent damage. Constructive exercises will come later. The first step must be to build up your resistance. Therefore, resist!" The force, which had not slackened for an instant, waxed slowly to the very urge of intolerability, and grimly, doggedly, the Lensman fought it. Teeth locked, muscles straining, fingers digging savagely into the hard leather upholstery of his chair, he fought it, mustering every ultimate resource to the task. Suddenly, the torture ceased and the Lensman slumped down, a mental and physical wreck. He was white, trembling, sweating, shaken to the very core of his being. He was ashamed at his weakness. He was humiliated and bitterly disappointed at the showing he had made. But from the Arisian there came a calm, encouraging thought. "You need not feel ashamed. You should instead feel proud, for you have made a start which is really surprising, even to me, your sponsor. This may seem to you like needless punishment, but it is not. This is the only possible way in which that which you seek may be found." "In that case, go to it," the Lensman declared. "I can take it." Day after day and week after week the advanced instruction went on, with the pupil becoming ever stronger, until he was taking without damage thrusts that would have slain him instantly a few weeks since. The bouts became shorter and shorter, requiring as they did such terrific outpourings of mental force that not even the master could stand the awful strain for more than half an hour at a time. And now these savage conflicts of wills and minds were interspersed with real instruction, with lessons neither painful nor unpleasant. In these the aged scientist probed gently into the youngster's mind, opening it and exposing to its owner's gaze vast caverns whose very presence he had never even suspected. Some of these storehouses were already partially or completely filled, needing only arrangement and connection. Others were nearly empty. These were catalogued and made accessible. And in all, permeating everything, was the lens. "Just like clearing out a clogged up water system, with the lens the pump that wouldn't work," exclaimed Kinnison one day. "More like that than you at present realize," assented the Arisian. "You have observed, of course, that I have not given you any detailed instructions, nor pointed out any specific abilities of the lens, which you have not known how to use. You will have to operate the pump yourself, and you have many surprises awaiting you as to what your lens will pump, and how. Our sole task is to prepare your mind to work with the lens, and that task is not done yet. Let us on with it." Eventually the time came when Kinnison could block out entirely the suggestions of his mentor. But he did not reveal that fact, nor now blocked out could the Arisian discern it. The Lensman gathered all his force together, concentrated it, and hurled it back at his teacher, and there ensued a struggle none the less titanic because of its essential friendliness. The very ether seethed and boiled with the fury of the mental forces there at grips. But finally the Lensman beat down the other's screens. Then, boring deep into his eyes, he willed with all his force to see that Arisian as he really was. And instantly the scholarly old man subsided into a brain! There were a few appendages, of course, and other appurtenances and incidentals to nourishment, locomotion, and the like, but to all intents and purposes the Arisian was simply and solely a brain. Tension ended, conflict ceased, and Kinnison apologized. "Think nothing of it," and the brain actually smiled into Kinnison's mind. Any mind of power sufficient to block mine is, of course, able to hurl no feeble bolts of its own. See to it, however, that you thrust no such force at any lesser mind, or it dies instantly." Kinnison started to stammer a reply, but the Arisian went on. "No, son. I knew and know that the warning is superfluous. If you were not worthy of this power, and were you not able to control it properly, you would not have it. You have obtained that which you sought. Go, then, with power." "But this is only one phase, barely a beginning," protested Kinnison. "Ah, you realize even that. Truly, youth, you have come far and fast. But you are not yet ready for more, and it is a truism that the reception of forces for which a mind is not prepared will destroy that mind. Thus, when you came to me you knew exactly what you wanted. Do you know with equal certainty what more you want from us? No. Nor will you for years, if ever. Indeed, it may well be that only your descendants will be ready for that for which you now so dimly grope. Again I say, young man, go with power." Kinnison went. End of chapter 18.